tapping Tom to say, yes, we can go live. If you just
Okay.
if you just count to 5, and then I think we'll be fine.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yes, we're live now.
Okay, excellent. Welcome to an online meeting of RBKC's Licensing Subcommittee, and thank you for attending. I'm Councillor Janet Evans, and I will be chairing this meeting. It is being held via Microsoft Teams, and it is also being streamed live. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor Dory Schmetterling, Councillor Marie-Therese Rossi, and me. Councillors, can you introduce yourselves and make any declarations of interest?
Okay, I'll start.
You go first, Dory.
And this, sorry, I thought, This is Dory Schmetterling. I am councillor for Pembridge Ward, north of Notting Hill Gate. I have no interest to declare.
And Councillor Rossi?
My name is Marie-Therese Rossi. I am a councillor for Redcliffe Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Janet Evans, councillor for Courtfield Ward, and I would like to mention that Councillor Rossi and myself sat on an overview and scrutiny committee on 9th of March 2022, which considered an item listed as call for action, whereby the ward councillors for the Earls Court ward spoke about the issues, mainly crime and disorder, faced in the Earls Court ward. All councillors at that OSC meeting unanimously voted to pledge their support for such item. Whilst Kenway Road falls within the Earls Court ward, we do not consider our support referred to above as being a significant other interest under the Councillors' Code of Conduct, which would preclude us from participating in today's hearing. We both approach this hearing with open minds and without having predetermined this matter. We are joined by Sharon Dyball from the Councillors' Licensing Team. Our legal officer today is Lindsay Lim-Massurier. Also with us is our committee's officer, Anne Wright. Ms. Wright will be monitoring all of our connections and help with any technical issues we may have. She is supported by Tom McColgan, Gareth Ebenezer, and Harry Ellis. Before we start the hearing for this case, just a few ground rules. Please keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak, and please make sure your mobile phones are on silent. Do keep your cameras on when not speaking if you wish, unless we run into connection problems. Please note that the Microsoft Teams chat function is not monitored, so please do not use it. In addition, this is a public meeting and the chat would not be seen in the live stream. Everyone should have reviewed the procedure for this meeting regarding the use of cameras and how to connect back in if you lose connection. Understood? Thank you. The case before us today is to grant a license for Get Here UK Ltd, rear of 2 to 4 Kenway Road, London, SW5 ORR. For those who don't know, that was formerly the police station. Now, for election of a substitute chair. The quorum for this committee today is 2. As there is always a possibility that I may lose connection temporarily during the broadcast, I am nominating Councillor Rossi to be appointed as the substitute chair. Members, please confirm whether this nomination is seconded. Councillor Schmetterling?
Yes, seconded.
Councillor Schmetterling seconds the nomination. Thank you very much indeed. I confirm that Councillor Rossi has been appointed substitute chair. Thank you, colleagues. Procedure. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of the meeting, which, as already mentioned, has been circulated with the papers and are online. First, the licensing officer, Ms. Dyball, will give a brief outline of the application. Ms. Dybel, could you confirm your attendance?
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will ask the applicant's representative, Mr. Chris Nixon, to present his submission. Mr. Nixon, are you here?
Good afternoon, Chair. Yes, we are here. I'm joined by two colleagues this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. You will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. He is joined by Mr. Gabriel Prava, Mr. Rob Santos. Did we say he's not here, Mr. Rob Santos?
No, Chair, he won't be attending. Sadly, he has other commitments to be tied with.
Okay, I'll take him off the list. Mr. Andrew McIntosh.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Good. And Mr. Ben Forbes of Get Here, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Please, could you all confirm your attendance?
Ben, sadly, also cannot attend today. He said
Ben Forbes?
Correct, Chair.
Okay, so who is here from Get Here?
Myself, Chris Nixon, Andrew McIntosh, and Gabriel Prava. We will be the representatives of the applicant, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee of the applicant. After that, questions may be asked by the objectors of the applicant. Then questions may be asked by the legal advisor of the applicant. Next, we get to the objectors. Ms. Philippa Seabohm, on behalf of Earls Court Village Residents Association, and Mr. Russell Levinson on behalf of himself and other residents in Earls Court Village. And ward councilors Tim Verboven and Linda Wade will speak as witnesses for Mr. Levinson. They will present their objections. They will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes each to do so. Please, could you confirm your attendance and let me know who's not here?
Russell Levinson, I'm here.
Okay.
You might suggest, Chair, that perhaps if I speak before Philippa, as I think she plans to speak mainly in confirming what I say, but if that's okay with you.
If that's okay with me, is that okay with Philippa? Philippa?
All right. Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee of the objectors. Then questions may be asked by the applicant of the objectors. Then I will ask the objectors to sum up their objections. They will have up to a maximum of 5 minutes each to do so. Then I will ask the applicant to sum up their submissions. They will have up to a maximum of 5 minutes to do so. After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Lemasurier, to deal with any questions she may have, for example, regarding any conditions. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Finally, we will turn to governance. Then to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. After all that, the meeting will end. I would like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers, which comprise the main pack and the additional submissions circulated, so there is no need to repeat their content. But please do draw our attention to certain points and pages, and Anne will move the document on the screen for us. Shall we get going? Ms. Dybel, can you outline the case for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This application is made by Get Here Limited for the grant of a new premises licence for the premises sited at 2 to 4 Kenway Road, Southwest 5. The details of the application and summary of the representations are as set out in the body of the report, but there are a few key points which I would like to bring to your attention and some additional information regarding the earlier application. This application essentially seeks to replicate the previous licence, which, as you are aware, expired on the 26th of May this year, save that the applicant is requesting a licence which is not time limited. During the course of the hearing of the initial licence application in May last year, and in view of the concerns raised, which included representations from the police, noise and nuisance, ward councillors and local residents, the applicant agreed to amend the application to a time-limited licence for 1 year only. At that time, the applicant confirmed that Getir had been operating in the UK since November 2020 and at this site for around 3 weeks. The applicant also accepted that there had been some teething problems and that further training was being given to the delivery drivers. The licence was subsequently granted for the 1 year period. As is set out in the committee report and supplementary papers, the business operates an online grocery and convenience store, and the premises operate as a storage and dispatch centre for the delivery of groceries and convenience items, including alcohol. There is no public access to the premises. The proposed hours for the delivery of alcohol are between 7 AM and midnight. Since May, when the previous licence expired, the business has made use of the temporary event notices available to it to allow it to continue to sell and deliver alcohol while this current application is in process. In the past year, the department has continued to receive complaints from local residents, several of which relate to delivery riders and drivers either riding the wrong way along Kenway Road or riding on the pedestrian passageways connecting Kenway Road to Cromwell Road and along Hogarth Passage, which connects Kenway Road to Hogarth Road. Further details are set out in the committee report and the supplementary paper marked Appendix B to the submission from Mr. Levinson. Since the report was drafted and circulated, a submission and video has also been received from Chris Nixon, UK Compliance Manager for Getir, which has been circulated to all parties. I've nothing further to add at this point, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dyball. Now, for the applicant's case, Mr. Nixon, please can you present your submission? And please do turn your camera on if you like. You have up to 10 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, before I begin, though I appreciate the answer has probably been given, in terms of the video that was submitted as additional evidence, if the Chair's minded to, we're happy for that to be streamed if anybody had difficulty watching it. I'm satisfied that your officers told us there that it has been circulated, but I'll leave it to your discretion, Chair. If you'd like it to be played, we're happy for it to be so.
What is the total amount of minutes exactly?
I believe about 2.5 minutes.
Do you want to use that as part of your speech?
I'd rather not, Chair. I am notorious for overrunning. In 8 years in this industry, I have never managed to stay within the time limit. So I'd rather not. So I'm asking for your discretion. If you'd like it to be played, happy to. If you'd like me to just carry on and get into it, then I'm happy to.
I'll ask the legal advisor. What do you think?
Chair, it's entirely within your discretion. I mean, I presume the committee have all watched the video in any event.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then it's not necessary. It's up to you,
Is
though.
the committee happy with that?
What
we've
about the
seen it?
To watch the objectors. Have the objectors watched it? I wonder.
Have the objectors seen it?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen some
Mr.
bits.
Nixon, what I would like to say to you, though, can you address, in your 10 minutes, please, the reason there were 34 complaints or 35 complaints? And can you please address that within your time constraints? That's really a prime concern to us.
I will, yes, I will try to do so, Chair. Yes. So sorry, Chair, your decision here, would you like me to just go into opening submission?
I think so, unless the objectors would like to see the video. But we are deciding the case and everyone's seen it.
Chair, I think the objectors have already said they've seen the video, I believe.
Okay, so then we're fine. Thank you.
Understood. In which case, good afternoon, councillors. Thank you for hearing us this afternoon, especially for making it a virtual hearing. Personally, I hail from the northwest, and it's usually a 6-hour train ride. It's a much longer walk, so we are appreciative that we're hearing this online this afternoon. Thank you to your officer for their very helpful report. I will try not to repeat anything you've just heard. However, forgive me if I do touch on a couple of points. First and foremost, councillors, You will hear me refer to this application, as your officer has already said as much, as a renewal application. Point here that, of course, there is no such thing as a renewal application within licensing law. However, it's for the understanding of the panel of my evidence that you may hear me refer to it as a renewal, but of course it is a new application. I'll begin, councillors, with a brief overview of Getty's model so you understand how the business works, and then I'll move on to further points. So in terms of Getty, as the officer said, we are a convenience store. We sell items from mini warehouses, which we call G stores, which can be understood as delivery hubs. The products on offer, as mentioned, are convenience items. Anything you would find in a local supermarket, you usually find within our offering. As already said, it is a delivery-only service. We do not have public access to the stores at any time. The only way that we fulfill an order is to deliver it to the customer's door. Now, in terms of the pathway, for the panel's understanding of how a customer makes an order, first and foremost, they have to download our app, named Get Here, freely available on the App Store, etc. Once they have downloaded this app, they then have to create an account, choose and nominate a verifiable delivery address, and then they are welcome to order from us. Payment is also taken via the app. We do not accept cash deliveries. Once the order's been verified, paid for, it is then sent out for delivery. The driver, the delivery driver, which we refer to as couriers, are actually waiting on site for this delivery to be ordered. They are waiting in an internal section of the premises, comfortable, it's not quite a rec room, but it's comfortable, it's inside and contained within the premises. Councillors, it's important to understand that our couriers are in one of two situations. Either they are within our waiting area or they are out on delivery. They do not loiter around, they do not work for any other company, and they're very easy to spot. They're in bright yellow and purple. I'm happy to go on or go into further detail of the training. However, just briefly, councillors, the couriers do go through an extensive training regimen. This includes road safety, Challenge 25, how to refuse an order, etc., etc. I won't go into too many details here, but if you'd like to ask me to do so, I'm happy to provide more details. Again, in terms of the renewal of the licence, your officer has outlined, and we've also submitted in our additional information, the previous licence is exactly what I have applied for on the new application. Every syllable, letter, decimal point, it's all the same. In terms of the hours, I will also like the panel to note that I've not asked to change the hours. We have applied for exactly the same thing, and we are content to limit the licensable hours to midnight and not go for the full planning allowance to go 24/7. This is despite the fact, councillors, that we do have demand past midnight, and it is a financial detriment to us to limit the licence. However, as a matter of goodwill, we are happy to limit it still. If I may move to the presentations, and as requested, Chair, I will go into a little detail here, but as a point to raise, the Licensing Act 2003 is very open when accepting objections. However, councillors, we must be mindful that there are many topics that are simply not recognised as relevant to the licensing objectives and should remain in other such legislation, such as planning, highways, general traffic law, etc. Primarily, I believe the case before you today comes down to a simple question. Is the premises better for having the licence? We would contend that of course it is, and I'll come back to that point. In terms of the drivers and the complaints submitted, councillors, every premises has its difficulties. Naturally, in our kind of business, it is quite new in terms of the concept, and there are a lot of challenges to overcome. However, we have demonstrated, and I have evidence to you, that where they are identified beyond to try and tackle these. Now, obviously, premises have to go of life cycles, and we will continue with further extensive efforts, which again, I'll come back to. But in terms of for our discussions and your determination here today, we are not here to discuss road traffic law. We are here to discuss licensable activity. I will also briefly touch upon your policy, councillors. Your licensing policy generally supports my application. There are very few references to our exact business model. It is not extensive, obviously. However, we are provided with a couple of sections. 8. We have agreed to the limiting of the hours as suggested within your policy, that being midnight close. And also 14.6, where delivery services are referred, we have also agreed to the suggestions therein, that being monitoring and control of driver behaviour while on site, including waiting areas, and also limitations for refuse collection, which again, we have conditioned to support that. Therefore, I would contend your policy does support the grant of my licence as applied. I appreciate, councillors, that this application can be considered slightly different to a usual application, and this is simply down to the nature of the history of the application. However, legally, we are talking about the grant of a new application, and therefore it must be judged on the merits and as stipulated within the guidance. Our case, councillors, is that the premises has proven itself over this last year. Despite the complaints raised, which we appreciate, recognise and address, when it comes to the licensable activity, the sale of alcohol, we have had 0 instances related to the activity, 0 instances related to alcohol. We have had no enforcement action taken, despite the fact we have had extensive liaison with your authorities. Again, I'll come back to that. And most importantly, we have had numerous engagement with local residents, a couple of which I recognise are present here today. These are taking the form of continual meetings and discussions as per the condition on the licence. And generally, I think we have a good relationship with residents. They may not be completely satisfied with us, I accept, but there is a working relationship there that is to the betterment of the premises. In addition, I also mentioned about liaison with local authorities. Now, by this, I mean your local police officers and environmental health and licensing. Environmental health and licensing have been involved with the residents' meetings and have graced us to join on several of these. In terms of local police, we have separate meetings, but on similar frequency. It is telling councillors that these officers have not objected to my application and clearly are content that it does support the licensing objectives. In terms of that relationship, again, I refer back to that I've applied for the exact same license. We are content and happy to continue these relationships as they have proved beneficial. Case in point here, councillors, would be the video that I did submit as additional evidence. I won't go into details, you've seen it and it's pretty clear, but essentially we have taken extraordinary steps to work with local authorities and residents to ensure our drivers are doing the best that they can. If you'd like to go into more details to discuss that further, I'm happy to. However, for the first time in 8 years, I'll conclude within the time limit allotted. That councillors, the evidence before you today shows one conclusion. The licence is to the betterment of the premises. We have spent the last 13 months proving that fact, and that it is correct and just to grant it as before. Therefore, I'll open for questions, but I'll conclude to commend the application to you, councillors, and ask you grant as applied for with the same conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that was the alarm. You came in before the alarm. Well done.
Just in time, Chair, just in time.
Just in time. Okay, we'll now take questions from the committee. I would like to know, first of all, talk about your control outside the premises. Who's standing there? What's the schedule? And are they controlling even the fact that some of them are driving in the wrong direction? Can you are they admonishing them and pointing that out, that they're not just standing there?
Do you mean while the couriers are on the road, if you will, en route to the customer, Chair?
Yes, I mean, and also just making sure that the street furniture out there or the bikes are, in order, not all over the place. People aren't eating and throwing their food in the street, etc.
Happy to. Chair, if I take those in reverse order. In terms of monitoring of staff on site, we do have dedicated management on site at all times. I'm joined by a colleague, Gabriel Prava, who is the manager for this site. In terms of their behaviour, and you mentioned the vehicles are kept within the boundary of the premises, Chair. There is a small courtyard which belongs to the premises, and this is where the bikes are parked. These are monitored, maintained, again, by on-site staff, and of course, so is the conduct of the drivers. They are instructed and provided with relevant facilities, including toilets, and there is no need to eat on the street. They're given plenty of facility to do so. And while they're on the road, our drivers are monitored for speed, junction approach speed, heavy braking, etc., by the GPS on their internal version of the app. Obviously, this is developing technology. It is not perfect, but they are monitored for safety standard as far as the technology allows. In terms of, Chair, you mentioned there about the isolated incidents of going down the wrong way, etc. We accept that there's still work to do. I'm not going to argue with the panel to say I think this site is perfect. There is plenty of work to do. There is always more training I can provide. Testament is the video that I've submitted as evidence. But we do also hire our couriers. They're not contractors. I have full rights for disciplinary measures, and we have done so historically, whereby drivers are not seen to be upholding their responsibilities for road safety. I do contend that they are isolated incidents. One such instance actually showed a flaw in the GPS system where pulling data from Google Maps identified a public walkway as a cycle path. As I say, Chair, this is a developing technology, but it goes from strength to strength. And as mentioned in my opening submission, we are fully happy to keep committing to these premises.
And did you were mentioning how they are hired. Are you paying them by how many rides they do? And are you timing them so that they're encouraged to go fast?
In terms of pay, no, Chair. They're not paid per job. They're not contractors. They are paid hourly. They are given contracts and work shift patterns. There is zero incentive for speed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They will be penalised if ever found to be breaking speed limits, and there's no incentive for them to make more orders within a specified time limit. Safety is our priority, not speed. Okay. In terms of fulfilling orders quickly, it's quite an easy concept. We open more premises. The closer we can be to our customer base, the more orders I can fulfill. However, their speed on the road is not a consideration. They are not paid bonuses for the amount of orders they do, nor the speed at which they complete them. So I hope that answers your question, Chair.
Thank you very much. Did I see Councillor Rossi?
Yeah, I wonder if you could answer me this question, that you say you have frequent meetings with residents and you listen to what they say and whatever. So if that's true, why do we have so many objectors here today? And why are there 35 complaints if you're really making an effort to engage with the local residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, I suppose that's a question for the objectors. In terms of our engagement, absolutely, I'm not going to contend, councillors, that we can't do better. I am going to always say that, of course, we can. What is important is that we have an established relationship here, and this is because of the licence that we applied for and was given last year, or for the period of the last year, rather. So in terms of, are they hugely or completely satisfied with our business? Evidently not, but that does not change the fact that we must continue that relationship. We must continue to improve ourselves. And as to their exact reasons for being here, obviously I can't answer that. That is for them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Schmetterling, turn on your mic, please.
Thank you. Really, it's to follow on from Councillor Rossi's comment in the first instance. I mean, also your video, which is, I suppose a training video to some extent, is that, you emphasise safe driving. You have someone, emerging onto the Kenway Road very slowly, looking right and left, basically right. But anyway, the point is, though, been in operation now a year. That's why we granted a 1-year license, and there's still so many complaints. I appreciate this is a little bit outside the remit of the Licensing Act, but why are you relying on an app for their driving behaviour when clearly the reports of what's going on right outside the premises? You know, children being nearly run over. I mean, the nearly is something one could debate, but the fact is that you get all these complaints, and I don't understand why you're relying on an app, some electronic means to monitor the driving, where most of the reports are for what happens within a very small distance of your premises, and that's why I'm wondering why you think that the premises have proven themselves. I mean, you do admit that work needs to be done. That's fair enough. But there's so many complaints. That's my question, really, at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the monitoring of the staff, as I say, this is an emerging and developing technology. It's not perfect. I'll say it again. However, I would point to the fact that there is monitoring that takes place. In terms of the industry, that's actually quite rare that a company would invest so much into actually monitoring the drivers while on the road. As I say, they are not contractors. I will not use any loophole to claim that I have no control nor right to control them on the road. I'm saying quite the opposite. However, everything has limitations. In terms of the app and the technology available, it's not the case that we're relying on it, Councillor. I mean, that every driver goes through a training regimen that does include training with our safety team on road safety. If they do not pass this course, they do not work for us. So there is plenty of effort and control mechanisms that are in place and will continue to be left in place. But as I say, in terms of the alleged incidents, then obviously there's still work to be done if people aren't happy. But that's not to say that we are not trying, Councillor. That is not to say that we are lax in our approach to this. It is quite the opposite, especially when you take into account industry standards. We are above and beyond. Thank you.
Well, thanks. I was just wondering, and the bit about the app, and I also mentioned that you've got stuff that appears to be happening more or less outside your premises. So how often do you have spot checks? Let's say an inspector, I'll put it in inverted commas, an inspector, your employees, standing outside the entrance watching, or then going to one of the other side streets as part of the one-way system to see how the drivers perform. Spot checks. I don't expect them to stand there for 8 hours a day, but just 5-10 minutes to watch the traffic. Why don't you do that? Why you don't need an app for that?
Councillor, we do that. In terms of the immediate vicinity of the premises, it's covered by the CCTV. So they do monitor it. In terms of the pathway, it's been mentioned before, and I'm sure the objectives will come onto it. We actually conducted a walk around with local residents in the development of that video, which I've submitted. I'm happy to go into more detail if you'd like to there. But yes, we do monitor. Like you say, I can't put people on corners for 8 hours a day every day, but it is monitored.
So you have people, say, for 10 minutes in a day or twice a day, standing in Redford Lane, for example, or not in view of the entrance of the premises. That's what I'm getting at.
I see, Councillor, it's not that regular. In terms of a daily 10-minute, I don't think that's particularly necessary. And of course, for 10 minutes really doesn't tell you anything. It's more of a case of ensuring training standards. That's why I say efforts must be placed.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions from the committee? Now we will have some questions from the objectors. Ms. Seabohm, did you want to speak?
I'll pass mine on to Russell, please.
Okay, Mr. Levinson? Would you like to ask questions only?
Is he
Okay.
got a technical problem, maybe?
You have a tech problem? Then we'll move on to
I have a problem that I'm an idiot. So I was muted. Sorry, I don't need to ask any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Verboven, did you want to ask any questions?
Yes, I would like to ask a question, please. Thank you very much, Chair. So my question relates to the quality of the engagement with the residents as a newly elected councillor, I attended a recent meeting at the beginning of June this month that Getir organised, and only 2 residents attended that meeting. And I just would like to know what the average, how many people in general attend these type of meetings, and how many people are engaging with your activities, to check the quality of it, because it just does reflect on what people think of the company's engagement.
Thank you, Tim. The question is the usual attendance at the regular meetings. Is that fair summary?
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Councillors, I obviously can't and won't name names of the attendance at these meetings, but usually it's around about half a dozen of the residents, and also the said he is also invited, but usually it's about half a dozen.
Thank you.
May I ask a follow-up for that?
Of course. Wait, I have to see if Mr. Verboven is finished.
Yes,
Councillor
sure. After
Verboven.
him first, of course.
I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Dory, 1 minute, please. Is Councillor Wade here, or she's away?
She sent her apologies, and I'm reading out a statement later on from her on that.
Thank you very much. Now you may proceed, Dory.
Thanks. My question
Councillor
is,
Schmetterlin.
thank you. How and where are these meetings with residents announced so that the attendance could be might do something about the attendance? So where do you advertise, and how do you advertise these meetings?
It's circulated via email. I believe there's a sign put up in front of the premises, but we have regular attendees now. We pretty much know who's there. In terms of the exact participants, again, I can't really name names, but the residents' associations locally are included, as are councillors, and everyone kind of knows each other, to be honest, councillor. Everyone knows.
Thanks. That's not the question. The question is, where do you advertise? So you're saying it's okay. You put a sign up on the premises, of course. That's the minimum.
It's circulated.
You send letters out to a few people in the street, for example, the parallel streets, that sort of thing. Or
no,
just to the residents' associations.
No, councillor, just to those that have asked to be attended. This was agreed right back at the beginning when the original licence was granted. Therefore, it's email invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Lemasurier, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to ask 1 or 2 questions to Mr. Nixon. I know it's probably more to do with road traffic, but I just wanted him to comment on Getir's delivery vans blocking the road, and also bike repairs being carried out on the street, leaving oil on the roads. I mean, what is the case with deliveries and with bike repairs? Can you just explain that, please?
I can, though I appreciate the reference that it's the Road Traffic Act, but of course I'll answer. In terms of the vans blocking the road, these are historical instances right back when we began the initial operation. Essentially, they were third parties in the supply chain that did not quite appreciate the intricacies of the area. And the way we have addressed this is we have internalised our supply chain and begin fulfilling it ourselves, and we use a loading bay on Earls Court Road rather than Kenway Road. So yes, these are historical instances, and again, isolated. In terms of the bike repair, again, this was one isolated incident, and again, it was a third-party contractor who, for reasons unbeknown to us, decided to do or carry out bike repairs on the road. That has since been resolved. The policy as we speak is that the bikes are taken away to a separate premises, and there's dedicated space there, so they're not actually maintained direct on site if they have to pull them to bits, so to speak. So they're taken away.
Thank you. No more questions.
Could I just add, the condition for meetings, residence meetings, says includes 50 metres within the premise. Residents within 50 metres of the premises. That means notifying people knocking on their doors, or slipping a letter under their door or into their letterbox. It's not just the RAs.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if you're doing that.
Would you like to answer that?
Of course, Chair. Yeah, of course. Councillor, no, I'm not going to say we leaflet everybody all the time. Personally, I think that's not quite appropriate. In terms of our engagement with the residents, You know, everybody knows these are going on. I'm not going to accost local residents by continually slipping notes to their doors. So I think our engagement is stellar here. I think it's appropriate, and those that want to be included are always accommodated. You know, even if people turn up without announcing themselves beforehand, I don't turn anybody away. Everybody is welcome to attend. So I think it's appropriate as it stands.
So you admit you don't actually comply fully with the condition, which is 3.3.
No, Councillor, I would not say that. I would say
you did admit it. You just admitted it. You said you don't wish to accost residents. You're not accosting anybody by giving them a letter under their, unless you have the email address, of course, but under their door letter, to say you're having a meeting. Yes. I mean, it's a copy of the notice you stick up on your premises.
The letter, Councillor, yes, email addresses. And I would agree that that is appropriate to do so. I mean, if I may clarify more there, and again, I can't name names, there are plenty of people on the attendance list that never turn up, but they are always invited.
That's not the issue. Sorry, Mr. Nixon, to interrupt. I'm not I agree with you about, you know, a number of things you said there, but the fact is, it says in the condition you must contact residents within 50 meters of the premises. It doesn't matter if they attend or not.
I suggest we leave. Excuse me. Yeah. I suggest that we discuss that condition, because perhaps it's not clear. Because clearly, if he is inviting a residents association, they will spread it out to their hundreds of members.
No, so we can discuss it later. I agree with
we'll
you.
Discuss it, because it's a question of how you view whether or not it's being satisfied, and maybe we need to clarify the wording. Okay.
Happy to address it later, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay. So, are we ready to move on to the objector's case? Ms. Seabohm and Mr. Levinson. I understand, Mr. Levinson, you'll be speaking for the two of you.
I'll be speaking first, Councillor, and Ms. Seabohm would like to follow up. I think that's the way we agreed between us.
Okay, that's fine. Up to 10 minutes.
May I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So there's been volume and let me just turn my camera on. Good. Okay, thank you. So there's been a volume and a variety of incidents over the past year, some of which are mentioned in the 40 or so emails to licensing enforcement, and they cover a wide range of incidents, including cycling on pavements and pedestrian passageways, and biking the wrong way down Kenway Road, on-street repairs causing disturbance, noise, debris, and not just that one incident, but there have been more than one incident, including someone repairing on the street and also, I think, in a van repairing by the site in Kenway Road. The one on the street caused a certain amount of unpleasantness as residents photographed him and the police were called. Concerns about the safety issues about driving by motorbikes into Gettier Courtyard and what that might do for pedestrians walking along Kenway Road. Fast cornering from Kenway Road into Walgrave Road, which is a blind corner, and then from Walgrave to Redfield Lane, where there's no pavement, and been one or two near misses. And then, of course, specific concerns around Walgrave Road, which has narrow pavement, sometimes slippery from Hollyhock. So people are accustomed, it being quiet streets, to walking in the street. As I think Gettier management actually noticed and said they felt like they should do the same thing when they were in the walkabout. And these issues went on for some months. It wasn't just something which kind of started and then went away. Now, I want to be fair to Gettier. They have engaged with us in residents' meetings, and they have met some of our concerns. They've stopped the on-site repairs, and they're loading on Earls Court Road, and so on, and they're retraining their drivers. But these are only matters of goodwill, if you like. They're not something which is conditioned at all. It's just goodwill. We've asked them to wheel their motorbikes into Kenway from the site to Earls Court Road. They say they can't for legal and safety reasons. Obviously, that would get rid of 90% of the problems, but they say they're unable to. I would also add that I'm personally only aware of issues in Earls Court Village, although I think Tim will talk about issues elsewhere other than other parts of Earls Court nearby. The fundamental point I want to make is that it's not really surprising there have been a lot of incidents, despite Gettier management working on it, because fundamentally we don't think it's a suitable site for a delivery business. These are quiet residential back streets because of the one-way system. The motorbikes have to go through 3 quiet roads which are narrow, with tight corners, with blind spots, with areas of narrow pavement or even no pavement. So it's not surprising there have been a lot of issues. It's not surprising also that even with the best will in the world, Getty had to put in a lot of new management practices, which in an ideal world they'd have thought of beforehand, but they didn't. We had to bring to their attention and took some time to resolve. So we think it's kind of inherently an unstable situation, safety and convenience-wise for the residents. So we think that because Getty has to go over and above in terms of managing this, and because they did not do so at the start and have had to kind of catch up, we think the situation needs to settle down and to have a kind of a year at least of no incidents or very, very low level, rather than the volume and variety that there have been, or even just one or two or whatever, before you should grant a indefinite license. So our request is that we are happy that Getty are applying to maintain all current conditions. We would request that a license should only be for a year, and to make sure that things settle down. We have also suggested conditions which I don't know if are within the scope of the Licensing Act, in particular that loading bays should be used, that motorcyclists should have full licenses, which they don't need to, and there should be no bike repairs on site or in surrounding streets, and that these should be conditioned. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Ms. Seebum?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As we understand it, the nature of Getty's business is to set up shop in residential areas in order to make fast delivery times for groceries to households.
Would you like to turn your camera on?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Residents in Kenway Road and Walgrave Road and Redfield Lane tell me that they find it exceedingly trying to have had their previously quiet streets invaded by constant Getty bike traffic. There are no commercial premises in Walgrave Road, Redfield Lane, or the lower part of Kenway Road where the bikes use to drive out to Earls Court Road. Complaints made by the residents over the past year have been collated by Danny Meadows and Russell Levinson, and as we said, their documents have been presented to the licensing hearing for the committee to read. The Residents Association therefore requests that the license to sell alcohol, if granted, has a shut-off time of 11 p.m. as the expected additional bike traffic for deliveries after that time of night will cause more disturbance. 11 p.m. is the shut-off time for selling alcohol in local pubs and restaurants, which is the directive from the council. But we kindly request that the licence renewal, if it's renewed, is reviewed after a year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Verboven?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to read out a statement from Councillor Wade, and I'll do it in the first person as it are her words. So, Getty as a company are undergoing worldwide changes, and it is anticipated that there will be staff reductions of 14% across their business, as reported in the financial press. It is therefore unclear what impact these reductions will have on the day-to-day management of this business in this location and the central management structure that we have been engaging with up to date. Since this business came into operation, I feel that residents and councillors have been offered a series of resident meetings which have been led by Getty rather than reflect some residents' concerns, and meetings only undertaken to comply with licensing requirements. The most recent resident meeting being on Tuesday the 14th of June, where nothing of substance could be discussed, as Getty considered discussion of some points raised to be out of the scope of the meeting and that they should be raised at a licensing committee meeting. The issue of cyclist training was detailed on a walkabout, but from the list of traffic-related offences mentioned, the message and training is not getting through, and monitoring of the bikers is restricted to the Kenway Road area. This does not reflect the impact on the wider neighbourhood, such as the Nevern Square Residents Association Conservation Area, where complaints have been raised about lack of driver indication, cutting corners at speed, for instance, the Bovey Road into Templeton Place, where there is a residential home, and Nevern Road close to Inkerman House, also a residential home, and close to Snowflake, a special needs school. So I have continuing concerns about the on-site management of the business and the effectiveness of the training and monitoring of the drivers. Why was the use of TENS used as a stopgap between the expiry of the original license? A business should have been aware of when their license was due to expire and applied earlier so that the license could have been back-to-back. I would like to see in place an assured framework that the staff reduction robust, given it is not clear as to where the staff reductions will fall. The local manager has to be trained, aware of the local concerns, streets and local policing problems. I would like to see far greater awareness of the impact of their drivers in neighbouring streets, and therefore would like to see as part of the condition a clause which indicates that there will be spot checks in neighbouring streets to ensure that training standards are maintained. The 10-mile-per-hour limit should be retained in the Oscourt Village, but also in the Nevern Square Residents Association area one-way system. No bike repairs on the highway or pavement areas. No delivery vans in Kenway Road. This was a point that was previously raised and I understood accepted by Katir as part of their action plan. There are loading bays available on Oscourt Road. I would therefore ask for a license for a one-year period in light of the volume and range of complaints that have been made by residents and issues addressed. Dialogue and improvements can continue before a full license is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to questions from the committee. I would like to know, Mr. Levinson, you mentioned the 34 complaints. Would you admit that some of these complaints were duplicates?
I thought there were 40 complaints, Councillor. I don't have them all in front of me, so I can't say. I imagine there may have been duplicates among them, but I'd also say that there are a lot of incidents which don't get reported because reporting something needs someone to note something, note a time, get in touch, know who to get in touch with, and for that person to then actually raise it. So I suspect there are a lot more incidents that have not been reported than the ones that have been, but I can't say for sure. I also know there have been a lot of incidents discussed with us and Get Here, which to some degree overlap, but may not fully overlap with that list of 40.
Now, in terms of the repairs, I didn't understand. You said it was a one-off. Is that correct?
No, I didn't say it was a one-off. Chris Nixon said it was one-off.
I see. And what are you alleging?
So I'm aware of two things. One I know more about than the other because my main information comes from Danny Meadows Clue. There have been repairs, I believe, done by a van near the centre, which led to a lot of noise and disturbance, which my neighbour, Danny, who lives in Kenway Road, objected to, leading to debris and oil on the roads. And then I think a lot of residents are aware of an incident which happened in Walgrave Road, where there was a motorbike repair guy who was repairing motorbikes Get Here motorbikes in Walgrave Road. And then some residents were unhappy about this because they thought this was totally unsuitable. They took photographs of it for their report. He got angry with being photographed. He called the police and said, I don't want to be photographed. The police then came and they said they can photograph you if you want to. So it was an unpleasant episode. I don't know if there was more than one episode of the vans. I do know afterwards we talked to Get Here about this, we complained about this, and we're very unhappy about the noise and about the aggro that had happened on these more than one occasion. And Get Here then said that all repairs would be done off-site at a centre, which they hadn't been beforehand. But it's another example, Councillor, of where an issue was going wrong but was put right, but only after we'd raised it, as opposed to the correct management practice having been set up in advance of complaints about it going wrong.
Okay, but they did something about it.
They did something about it. I'll be fair to them.
Thank you.
They did things about it, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Rossi?
Yeah, one question to Tim. If following on from Linda's statement that you read out, if you are anticipating a reduction of 14% of the business, surely that would end up with less drivers and less disturbance. Why is that a worry that you are specifically raising at a licensing committee? And then the other question that I'd like to put actually to licensing is just to reiterate his comment about why TENS were why was Getter able to use TENS in the kind of interim between getting a license review. I think licensing perhaps could answer that because it's been thrown out there but not answered. So Tim, if you could talk to me about the financial side and why that is a particular worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. We actually anticipate that the 14% reduction will fall on the management side, not on the driver's side, which means that it will impact the oversight of the drivers on site. And that's where the problem comes from. If I understood correctly, also from the previous meeting, Getir meeting I attended at the beginning of June, the current site manager is actually leaving to a different site and is being replaced as well. So that also puts additional pressures on this case because that not just the drivers need training, but that particular new manager will also need training. I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
May I add a supplementary point to that, which is that it's not just the manager on site, the management on site, but also the overall framework of central management who are setting the standards and the rules for management might be affected by these cuts.
Thank you. Councillor Schmetterling, I see Mr. Nixon, you'll have your summation. You could bring it up. Councillor Schmetterling?
I do, yes. The objectives. First of all, do you report all these incidents, given these incidents are actually not, within the purview of the Licensing Act? We spent some time discussing them, and quite rightly so. But I mean, do you report these incidents to the police? That's the first question. They really should. I don't mean just that one, that one encounter about the photograph, but I mean the traffic violations, going the wrong way down the streets. To take a video and send it in. And I know that police are willing to listen at least, and maybe send warnings out, informal or formal. And secondly, how satisfied are you actually with the meetings that Getir hold?
If that's for me,
yes, for Mr. Levinson or anybody else amongst the objectors, Mr. Seaboom and so on.
I don't know about the police is the answer, because I know that Danny has sent a lot of them, has been the central point for collating them, and he sent them to licensing enforcement. I don't know if he sent any to the police or not. Are we satisfied with the meetings? I think they've not been bad, in my opinion. We have disagreed with them quite strongly on some subjects, but they have shown some willingness to engage. And we'd like those meetings to continue and to be part of the condition if any license is granted.
Well, it is already in the condition, so that's we're going to get, when it comes to conditions, we're going to have to discuss that one aspect which I raised before. But okay. The thing is that you can do it to. That's what I'm trying to say. You can report these instances to licensing enforcement, but they're not actually licensing issues. They are police issues, traffic issues. So that's why I'm asking you, or maybe suggesting to you, that you report them to police. That's really what I want to say at this point.
Thank you. Now,
sorry, the question is, who's the Danny? Sorry, can you confirm? We got lots of these emails ultimately from you, Mr. Levinson, but there's a Danny, an anonymous Danny. Who's that?
Okay, he's a very vocal person. I think you wouldn't find him anonymous at all.
It just says Danny as a signature. We didn't get from address, and it doesn't. You don't tell anything. It doesn't tell. I
suspect that's because the licensing team asked for it to be redacted or something. It's Danny Meadows Clue, who's a company owner who lives in Kenway Road, who's been personally very affected by anything that happens in Kenway Road, particularly the blockages and particularly the driving and the loading bay and the repair stuff. And he has been the central point for collating these for these emails and sending them on to licensing enforcement. I then just taken a list of them and packaged them up and summarised them.
So which
Yeah,
number at Kenway Road did you say he lives in?
I'm sorry?
Which Kenway Road number did you say?
I didn't say. I don't know the number. I'm sorry.
All right, doesn't matter. I think
it's relative. It's not. I think it's at the same end of Kenway Road as Gettier is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We can now allow Mr. Nixon to ask some questions of the applicant.
I have no questions, Sarah. I'll save it for summing up.
Okay. Did you want to respond to anything?
I could briefly, because there's a lot of conjecture around reduction in staff numbers. Now, obviously, I'm not here to discuss global recession or particular commercial need. However, it's not a case that we are losing our site manager. Our site manager is being replaced by another, an extremely experienced individual, I would say, with merit to the same standard as our dear Gabriel. So there is absolutely no substance that management will lax simply because I'm changing the manager. In addition, in terms of the staff reductions that's been widely published, this figure comes from a global perspective. Gettier is a multinational company. Will there be reductions in staff in the UK? Of course. Will it affect the quality or even to an extent the number of management? No, it will not. The high standards will be maintained regardless. And Chair, it's not for us to have conjecture on whether management will get worse. It simply won't happen. Standards will be maintained. So that's all I'll touch on before summing up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to the legal advisor. Ms. Lemasurier, would you like to ask some questions, please?
No, I don't
Yes.
have questions. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. It's Sharon Dybel. Did you want me to respond to the point that Councillor Rossi made about the temporary event notices?
Sure, why not? It's always helpful.
Yes. So it's really a matter for the premises as to whether or not they choose to utilise the temporary event notices, which are available to any premises, whether licensed or not. In this particular case, the application was submitted in April, and had there have been no objections, the consultation period would have ended just shortly before the licence was due to expire. So it's possible that the applicants weren't anticipating objections being made, which obviously has extended the process for them, but they can answer that probably better.
Okay,
Thank
Happy
you.
to, Chair, if you'd like me to.
Sorry?
I'm happy to answer that if you'd like me to.
If you want to, sure, quickly.
Essentially, it's only a short answer, Chair. It's exactly as the licensing officer surmises there. Yes, we're applying for the exact same licence that's been in place and has worked very well. We didn't anticipate objections. Obviously, in the lapse time between... Sorry, Chair, I'm getting feedback. Chair, can you hear me? I'm getting a lot of feedback on my microphone.
I do hear you. If anyone if most people can turn off their mics unless there's chatting, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. It's exactly as your officer has outlined there. It's to basically cover the difference in the time. Obviously, it is of financial detriment for me to not sell alcohol. Even though it's not a huge seller, it still makes a percentage. So it's exactly why. I'm not sure why Councillor Linda Wade would see that as anything other than the obvious, to make up the time while my licence lapsed. But I suppose only she can answer that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lemasurier, would you like to ask any questions?
Not really. I think I just wanted clarification on one thing from Councillor Bornham. Was it 14% or 40% that you were referring to? In Councillor
14.
1-4, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, we are going to have some summing up. Please, can you present your summing up? You each have up to 5 minutes to do so. Mr. Levinson and Ms. Seabaum, will you be summing up today? Turn on your mic, please.
I'd like Russell to sum up, please.
I can sum up very briefly. Briefly, we believe it's inherently an unsuitable location That's why there have been a volume and a variety of issues, making it an unstable situation and a lot of complaints, most of which were not anticipated by Getir and addressed until they were raised by objectors. Getir has improved things, but it's only a matter of goodwill, and it was done in retrospect after they were raised. That's why we propose a license limited to a year, and we've also proposed various other conditions for the committee to consider.
Chair, sorry, can I interrupt very rudely at this moment?
Yes.
Before summing up to go ahead, we probably need to do the conditions bit. Many apologies, Mr. Levinson, that's my fault. Sorry, if we could just go through draft conditions, then we'll do summing up if you don't mind.
Sorry, it wasn't
Beg your
on
pardon,
here.
that's my fault.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I don't intend to go through every single condition on the existing licence. What I would like to focus on is obviously that condition 17 about the residents meeting.
Mhm.
Other things I'd like to consider are the residents have requested a time limited licence again. I'd like to consider, I think it was Councillor Wade suggesting a 11 p.m. end for the alcohol. Obviously they've got till midnight at the moment. And I wanted to just run through Mr. Levinson's suggested conditions, which are on pages 41 to 42 of the pack.
Mhm.
So if in the first instance, we could go to existing condition 17, which is shown on page 16, please.
Is there anyone here to move this? Put it on the screen?
Hi, it's Anne. I am trying. It's just very slow, but
Okay.
we should get there.
In the meantime, I can say it's condition 3.3 of the just expired license, and as was said, 17 on the new in the new pack.
Condition, on page 16 in the new pack. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there was some discrepancy about how the residents' meeting was being relayed. Just having a look at the meeting, it was to be at least 4 times a year with residents, local residents associations and ward councillors, and residents being within 50 metres of the premises. So I think we need to be satisfied that you're going to meet that condition, or does this condition need to be amended? I want to hear what Mr. Nixon has to say.
Thank you, Lindsay. I mean, I'm content that the condition is being adhered to with the signage. I mean, in terms of notifying people within 50 metres, the sign's on the door. I personally think it is more appropriate to notify persons electronically. Case in point that the residents' associations would be a capture all if they then disseminate from there. So I think it's perfectly fine as it is. In fact, if there is to be any amendment, I would say that notification electronically is more appropriate rather than putting leaflets through people's doors, which is slightly 1960s.
So it doesn't actually say do it electronically, or it doesn't actually say do it by leaflet drop either.
Appreciated, and I also appreciate that you could claim that is up for interpretation. But in terms of how it's working perfectly fine. And those that want to attend. Those that don't. They will always have invitations, and it's an open door. So personally, I think the condition's fine as it is, and it is.
Can I just ask the residents and the objectors what they think about that condition? Comments to make?
Ironically, view to alert the residents, and some of them find it interesting and some don't find it interesting, and some think that whatever we say, we think that the best answer for everybody would be if the bikes were walked up to Earls Court Road, which is sort of 13 metres from their premises and at Kenway Road.
We'll come to that in a minute when we come to Mr. Russell Levitt. I'm just asking about condition 17 at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
So,
could I ask a question? How did you collect these email addresses?
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, how many do you have?
They're members of the Residents Association.
Oh, not you, Mr. Nixon.
Oh, sorry.
They were provided to us, Chair, from the original application. We learnt the residents' associations from your local officers, and I believe that they're all listed on RBKC website anyway. So they're well known, and of course, From that, we then basically built an attendance list, and from those that joined from those original invitations. In addition, all the original objectors were added to the group. So it's built over time, admittedly, but it's still a solid group with solid attendance.
Mr. Levinson.
I just want to add, the Resident Association may well not capture all the people who might be having some issues with Getir. So I think the idea of doing some sort of physical notification to people who do live immediately by in case they're not being captured is not whether it's done for every meeting or intermittently. I think it's a good idea to keep that notification.
So electronic and leaflet you're suggesting?
If it's within 50 metres, you're not talking about very many places, to be honest.
Could I just add, I remember this was added because this meeting, as Mr. Nixon well remembers, it's a controversial matter as we can still hear, even though a lot of it's nothing to do with licensing. Of notification of people within 50 metres was specifically added to try and let's say alleviate any issues. And I don't understand what's so difficult when you produce a notice for your premises, which I presume is A4 or something like that. It's nothing fancy. That you just produce another 10 of them and shove them under the door or through a letterbox. I just don't see the difficulty, because you won't have the electronic addresses. Plus, people do come and go. So having an email address is great, but for individuals, it doesn't mean that much. It's the RAs, the resident associations, will have the up-to-date email addresses. But I don't understand why there's so much resistance to something that was put in there to try and help the applicant, Mr. Nixon. I just don't see it. And what's the difficulty in shoving a bit of paper under a letterbox? Not everybody's on email on top of that.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, of course I'll address that. There is no resistance, Councillor. I'm simply saying that what we currently do adheres to the condition, because, of course... Well, it doesn't appear to. Well, I disagree. But in terms of catchment, residents' associations, by my understanding of the word, is that the residents are included in them. I mean, it's in the name. If people think we are not inviting people, then sure, we will do that. I'll happily ask the guys to put letters through people's letterboxes, or, like you say, slip a note underneath the door. I'm simply maintaining that the condition does not need to say that. If that's what people want, that's what I'll do. As I said, I have always been accommodating. But that also said, it works, Councillor. This does work. I don't see anybody complaining that they've never been invited or I've refused entrance to the meeting. That hasn't happened. So I simply maintain that the conditions adhered to, and it's perfectly fine as worded. That's all.
Well, clearly there's a disagreement here about how you're putting it and what I see, but I think we'll have to deliberate on that. We'll discuss it in the private meeting.
There's another point, however, and that is that we've had this with other cases. When you ask for 4 meetings a year, fewer and fewer people come because people are busy. So I have seen at many meetings that there isn't a huge attendance because a lot of people aren't that bothered. So the residents' associations are your best place to go, actually, because they have emailing lists that are very big, and it's much more efficient. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, but one doesn't preclude the other. There was specifically put in there. Sorry, Chair. That phrasing was put in there specifically. I don't disagree with what you say. Of course, they have big emailing lists, but that's not the point. Anyway, I've made it. I've already said it.
You've made your point.
We'll deliberate on it afterwards.
Thanks. I think it boils down to a question of cost and proportionality at the end of the day. But exactly. Mr. Nixon has mentioned,
printing 15
that they will address that. Yeah. So it sounds like.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Schmetterling. Lindsay, did you want to address?
There's a few more bits. I think Councillor Borum's got his hand up.
Yes.
Speak.
Mike?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself there. Sorry, Chair. No, I just wanted to add to the debate basically and saying that indeed, because in the end, I only attended one meeting, but the meeting was only attended by 2 residents and me as a councillor. And for me, that is actually not that much engagement. So anything that we could do to increase the engagement in preparation for those kind of meetings would actually be really, really helpful. Councillor Schmetterling says, not everyone is on email, but also not everyone is part of the residents association. And if we're trying to reach out to the people exactly in the area of the Katir base, I think it would be worth exploring other options to increase the interaction with local residents to improve the conditions of the business in the area and the views of the business in the area as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay, could I ask something?
Of course.
Yes. If we are finding, and it's not only here, we're finding it all over that people are saying they're not being addressed. And I think the real problem now is whether we go electronic or leafleting, as Councillor Schmetterling mentioned. Do we have here, is Mr. Levinson, are you chair of the RA?
No, I'm the chair.
You're the chair. How many members do you have?
We have about up to 40 members. We're just very small area.
Right. So you're getting a 5% people coming to the meeting that Mr. Nixon is calling. So would it make sense for you to call a meeting and invite Mr. Nixon to address your people?
In addition to this condition you're talking about?
Or instead, no, we can keep the condition, but it can be either or. Maybe it would be more efficient.
Chair, sorry, it's Heidi Titcombe here.
Yeah.
Just to assist you, I'm one of the legal advisors. If you were minded to grant this license, you can only put conditions on that the owner can control. So you can't put on conditions that residents will call a meeting because that's outside his control. And also, you wouldn't want to impose a condition on residents that they would have to do something because this is a premises license.
Okay,
so I'll just make that caveat for you.
Okay, I was trying to help.
Yes, no, I appreciate the difficulty
here.
I mean, it is quite. It's not totally unusual, but we do have model conditions and we don't normally put in 50 metres a requirement because there is also a notice at the premises, so they have to put up the notice.
Right.
But and they are telling the residents associations. In here it doesn't say ward councillors because often if they tell ward councillors they also have other means of advising. Oh yes, it does. Sorry, I've just read that there. So there's various ways that you can actually engage with residents, either through residents associations, ward councillors, and the notice. And sometimes you put in named numbers of properties, but I don't know whether that's feasible here. Otherwise, it is quite difficult to gauge how you pick up everybody. But I would accept that even if the premises does notify people, it doesn't mean there's an obligation on anyone to attend.
Exactly, and historically there has been very low attendance at these kind of meetings.
Yeah.
It's not unusual.
Okay, so I just thought I'd assist with that.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I move on to the next item?
Yes, please.
Obviously, the applicant is applying for a new unlimited licence, but I think a couple of points in the discussion, there's been a mention of another time-limited licence. Obviously, unless the applicant agrees to another time-limited licence, it's not up for grabs. We'd either have to grant or refuse. But I'd like the applicant's or Mr. Nixon's thoughts on another time-limited licence, please.
Thank you, Lindsay. No, I would not have evidence here to say that the alcohol licence previously applied has had any detriment. In fact, plenty of evidence to say the opposite. We're content that it works fine and that alcohol sales from the premises has had zero impact. In fact, as I've said, by the licence, we've had such engagement that we're content as it is. So no, I would not agree to a time-limited licence. There's no evidence here to say it should be.
Thank you. Another suggestion was that I know you've got off sales until midnight. Another suggestion was they end at 11 p.m, 2300 hours, in line with pubs and other local businesses. Can I have your thoughts on that, please?
Again, no. There's no evidence to suggest that it's had any detriment going till midnight. The difference of 1 hour would have zero effect, except an unnecessary financial burden. So again, no. Thank you.
Right, I think last I just want to touch on Mr. Levinson's proposed conditions, page 42 of the pack. I'll preface this by saying most of what we've touched on the time limited licence. Most of the suggestions are to do with road traffic offences. They're not something that we can put on the licence. We've asked the question about repairs on the street, and obviously that's not happening anymore. That was a one or two off incident. We can't condition motorcyclists having full licences, traffic speeds. I think you're already parking on Earls Court Road anyway, rather than Kenway Road for the loading bays. So, and also we can't make Gettier wheel their bikes up to Earls Court Road. Again, that's road traffic. So I don't think any of the conditions would be applicable here. But obviously, I just wanted Mr. Levinson to know that we'd considered them as part of the discussion. I just wanted any further comments on that.
When you mentioned the load traffic and the on-site repairs, you didn't specifically say they're nothing to do with licensing. What you said, that Gettier has changed their practice, if they're not doing it, it's a matter of goodwill. The request was if it could be conditioned. If it could be conditioned, could the committee consider conditioning that? Because you didn't say for those specific points that was not a licensable condition. So
you want us to consider a condition whereby any bike repairs do not take place on the street?
And also that the delivery should be using the loading bay.
And use loading bay on Earls Court Road.
Yeah.
Okay. We can get the councillors to consider. Mr. Nixon, do you have any comments on those two items?
Yes, please, Lindsay. Again, the quick answer is no. That would be conditions related to non-licensable activity, which would not be correct. So, no, I'm not happy to agree.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go away and consider that. Okay, I think that's all on the conditions front. Was there anything else anybody wanted to raise in relation to conditions on the existing licence, or anything that's not been mentioned? I think we've cut. I mean, the existing licence is quite heavily conditioned as it is. I didn't think of anything else that cropped up during the discussions.
I think it's very straightforward.
Thank you. I'll hand back to you then, Chair, for summing up.
Yeah. So, Mr. Levinson, would you like to sum up?
I have already, but I'll just repeat it very quickly so as not to take up anyone's time, is that we believe it's an unsuitable location. There've been a volume, and not just a volume, but a variety of issues. They were not thought of or addressed by Gettier in advance. They had to be raised by the residents. It took some months for them to be noticed and them to be acted upon. As a result, we think this is a place which needs exceptional management, and for that, and we think that before he grants an indefinite license, it should wait for matters to calm down so that we have a year, a wide volume or wide for incidents.
Mr. Verboven, did you have anything extra to add?
Just to summarise from what Linda wrote, basically because of the ongoing issues in the past year, there were a lot of issues being raised. So there is still a lot of work to be done. And before a permanent licence can be granted, we feel that the extension of a licence for another year would be really suitable and helpful to address those issues so that the residents are more in a comfortable place and accept a more permanent license.
Thank you very much. Heidi, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to explain for the purposes of the residents that in terms of licensing, it's for the licensing, it's for the applicant to apply for a license for patient. In this case, they've applied for a permanent license, not a time limited. So it's not the committee change unilaterally. They can either decide not to grant the license or to grant it for the period that has been requested. So in terms of licensing, whilst previously they agreed to 1 year, in this particular case, they're not agreeing to 1 year. So I just wanted to make it clear that the ambit of the committee's powers are slightly limited because they are requesting a permanent license. I just wanted that to make it clear to everybody here.
I think that was a really important point, that people realize that.
I think you've heard from the residents and the councillors what our request is. How the committee deals with that particular request within the framework of the licensing laws and ambit is up to you.
Thank you very much for giving me your permission.
I'm giving you your permission. I wasn't happening at all.
Mr. Nixon, would you like to sum up?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Bear with me a second. So, councillors, we've heard quite a lot today, and I think we've had some great discussion. And obviously, there are many matters of great importance when it comes to this premises. And we appreciate every premises has its challenges, and we will continue to work, we will continue to engage, we'll continue to bend over backwards to make this site work. However, even though it has been mentioned, I will have to close on the particular legal points that we are bound by the Licensing Act. In terms of what is within your power to determine today, obviously it must be restricted to what I have applied for. Now, I know and appreciate the Licensing Act 2003 is a permissive regime, and it does allow for these kinds of discussions. However, your decision today must remain within the licensable activity. And what I mean by that, councillors, is that the mere addition of the sale of alcohol has been tellingly absent from these complaints and the discussions here today. The law requires of an operator, of the holder of a premises license, that our end customer is not underage or drunk. This is the key principle of the Licensing Act, and this is why we have the licensing objectives. Matters that fall outside that or are unlicensable activity, conjecture on staff reductions, when I use temporary event notices, anything to do with the Road Traffic Act, which I'm grateful for your legal advice for bringing up, is simply not recognised as relevant under the regime and the law as prescribed. Now, Councillor, we're provided within the Section 182 guidance that conditions that relate to non-licensable activities should fall at a review hearing following problems occurring at the premises. Councillors, we have referred to this as a renewal application, but of course legally it is not. It is a new application and we are not at a review hearing. The conditions must remain within the licensable activity. In addition, and apologies for your legal, that's section 16.52. In addition, within the guidance, we're provided 9.43. The authority's determination should be evidence-based, proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. Councillors, there is no evidence here that the way in which I sell alcohol has affected the premises for the past 13 months. To the contrary, you have overwhelming evidence that this premises has brought about and facilitated great amounts of engagement and improvement, despite the fact, as we all know and admit, it does not fall in the purview of the Licensing Act. It has had, without doubt, a positive impact. And therefore, when making your determination today, quite bluntly, councillors, I have not applied for a delivery business. That will be that will be allowed regardless of your decision today. This is not a planning application. The planning allows for a delivery business. And as we all know, and as your policy clearly reflects, they are different and separate regimes and must be kept so. What I have applied for, councillors, is for the licensable activity, the ability to sell alcohol. We're lacking that there is no evidential link between how I sell alcohol and undermining the licensing objectives, then quite simply, there is none. And therefore, councillors, ending on that legal point, all I can simply say is that the previous licence worked. There was zero impact from simply having the facility to sell alcohol. Therefore, any other considerations cannot be within your determination today and must remain in other separate regimes. In which case, I will close there, councillors, with commending the application to you and the amount of evidence that has been presented and demonstrated showing that the premises is better for the licence. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lemercier, do you want to add anything as our legal officer?
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do our licensing officers have anything to add?
Nothing from here. Thank you.
Thank you. And our governance officers, anything to add?
No, nothing from us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for their excellent presentations. Very professional. So thank you very much. And we will now we have reached the end of the meeting. We have all the information that we need, and we will retire to make our decision in private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing will be closed and the live broadcast will end. A summary of the decision will be sent to the parties within 5 working days, and starting from today's hearing, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. The hearing is now closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for all the
Thank you, Chair.
Pleasure.
How do we close it?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. See you later.